further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started with this edition of the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission meeting, which we are meeting here on this Tuesday, December 4th, 2018. I'd like to start by roll call.
Commissioner Fallman.
Here.
Commissioner Kime.
Here.
Policy Advisor Tucker.
Here.
Chair Howard.
Present. Can you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let's go ahead and move to public comment. Anybody wishing to make public comment regarding matters either on or off the agenda and within the Commission's jurisdiction may do that. So at this time, however, the Commission is not permitted to take action on non-agendized items. Good afternoon, Ms. Cooper. Come right on up. Time's a wasting. Yep.
Appeared to be
thank you. You're good.
a slight shortfall of funding. So there was some funding shuffling around at the end of the year, and one issue that I don't understand is I remember we were a little concerned about spending for planning on the Elk Valley Crossroads project. I know we were all concerned about the danger of the intersection with 199 and Kings Valley in particular. That is very dangerous. And I remember Caltrans coming to us and saying, well, the main intersection on Elk Valley Road, they made changes and they felt that, given that time, that it was safer. And so it seemed that the logical thing to do, in speaking with other citizens who use that intersection quite a lot, is that we really don't need that intersection. And that is the main problem in that corridor. People can get onto Elk Valley Crossroads. They don't need to be cutting across at right where the hill comes down.
On Parkway or on Elk Valley?
Yeah, where Elk Valley meets. Yeah, okay. You go right up in there.
Yep.
Kings Valley comes right out on there. Just give that road, dead end that road and bring it to the crossroads. But, you know, in concern for the danger of that intersection, then all of a sudden we were catapulted without really public demand into an entire planning project that I believe costs around 20 or 30, I don't know, something in that range, 20, 30 if I remember correctly, 1,000. And when I opened up the books on that the other day, it was to design to continue the Elk Valley Road, join that, and make of all things, a bike trail. And it just strikes me as that's our planning process now. Bringing bikes into, it's a bike project. It's not focusing on the danger of that intersection there that the public recognizes as being dangerous. And so I feel like we've thrown out some money, and that why couldn't we, now that we have this shortfall of funds, why couldn't we curtail the planning on that and have a little extra for something important like that trail to evacuate the harbor when something important comes along, you know?
Appreciate
so
it, Eileen.
That is the contrast that I'm seeing here. Thank you.
Duly noted. Appreciate your time. And just so the public is aware, we've had an incredible amount of public input and discussion specific to our areas along the 199 corridor and specifically with the crossings, both at Kings Valley and Parkway, that intersection. In addition, the major focus of this study Elk Valley Crossroad and Highway 199. Major amount of input, especially back to the elected officials specific to this. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead, if there's no additional public comment, we're going to go ahead and move forward with and adjourn to the Policy Advisory Committee and take up the consent agenda, which are items A, B, and C on the consent agenda. Can I get a motion at this time?
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Public comment on the consent agenda items A, B, and C. Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comment, we'll move it back. Can you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Keim?
Yes.
Commissioner Fallman?
Yes.
Policy Advisor Tucker?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yep. All right, let's go ahead with our policy and administrative items. Item number D, City of Crescent City request for $42,000 for Sunset Circle project scope change. Tamara, can you please update us on this?
In the TAC meeting, the TAC members had a very thorough conversation about the RSTP fund balance before we discussed the remaining items on the agenda. So while we did make decisions on each item one at a time, we talked about the fund balance of RSTP funds overall in general. The RSTP fund balance, if all of the TAC and staff recommendations are agreed with by the commission today, will leave our fund balance at just over $1,000. That's a very low fund balance. However, we will have $235,364 coming in the next couple of months to restore some of this fund balance. So I wanted to make sure the commission knew that we watch that fund balance, the RSTP fund balance as a whole, looking into our future and sorting priorities with the whole in mind. And then with the details of the city request, the city staff is here to give you more information and answer any questions you have.
So to be clear, at least the recommendation coming from the TAC concerning this shortfall, or not shortfall, but expenditure of the planning dollars from RSTP brings us down to what amount again?
This spreadsheet that I put before you, this is RSTP. These are these funds can be used for planning, but they are also construction dollars.
Okay.
And we typically use RSTP funds for construction and most often as match funding.
Okay.
So when one of our partner agencies needs match funding, we go to this fund source, and nearly, if not everything on the spreadsheet today is a match funding for a large grant.
Okay.
So these are not generally planning dollars. These are generally, well, they can be used as planning. We don't use the RSTP funds in general as planning.
Sure.
We use them as project initiation dollars or construction dollars.
Understood. Thank you, Tamara. Let's hear from our partner agency if they got any additional input at this time. Mr. Olson, welcome to the public side of things instead of the private side.
Why, thank you, Chair Howard. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Why don't you give us a brief scope on
Sure.
on this project?
The original scope of work was intended to connect the city side of a coastal trail that covers Beachfront Park and then reconnect over to the Harbor Trail side of things. So initially that was just the scope of the project, serious connection of link of two pieces of the trail. As we were going through the planning process, there was concerns raised by adjacent property owners about just quantity of land that we were going to need to acquire in order to construct the trail. Being sensitive to the community's needs and desires, we worked with a smaller group, especially the landowners, to reduce the overall amount of land that would be required to construct the trail by about 75%. So we're anticipating overall some net savings in actual land or right-of-way. Yeah, so we haven't realized that savings yet because we haven't gone through the negotiation process. So the reason for the additional $42,000 was the original scope of work with Stover Engineering had a very specific survey area, and the new trail or alignment wasn't included in that original survey. So this is to cover additional survey work. One of the other things brought up by the property owners and through consultation with Caltrans was the idea of turning Sunset Circle into a one-way road also. Right. So from a safety perspective, Caltrans was on board. We're going to be bringing RVs that normally go into Shoreline from either direction. They'll only be entering on the what we would call the west end or the north side of 101. And then as they're exiting, everybody going onto 101 will be going through an access controlled area. So through a stoplight, which just makes a lot of sense to Caltrans, and some very minimal kind of signage that we would implement right on 101.
Terrific. Okay,
So
thank you.
If I could add, the majority of this project is grant funded through the Active Transportation Program, and there are a ton of restrictions with those grant funds, so you can't just move money from one phase to another and hope it all works out in the end. Each phase is very specifically funded and limited to the amount of money, so that's an additional reason why additional funds are needed from the Transportation Commission.
So we can only move, I think it was 20% of the fund, like reallocate it one time. And we thought that it would be smarter, since we're reducing that right-of-way acquisition, that will most likely, if construction costs are escalated for some reason, that we can reallocate those right-of-way acquisition funds over towards the construction funds.
Yeah. So this is just a smarter choice.
Sounds good. Any questions from the advisory group for Mr. Olson?
Just a quick question about the, now that the trail is going to be using Sunset Circle, I was wondering what the separation was going to be between the trail and the roadway. I didn't get a chance to see.
I believe that we have a design cross-section in the report, and we were anticipating, hold on, 3 to 5 feet approximately. Some of the considerations that we initially talked about, especially with property owners, was a dividing fence similar to what you see over on the Harbor Trail. That didn't really fly with property owners, didn't like the look of it, access control onto their property, and there was some safety concerns brought up. Whereas if somebody's along that trail and there's an attacker or something, that they were afraid they would be kind of hemmed in between the two things. So there, you can see that along the Harbor Trail. Another option that was brought up that's less desirable but effective is along Starfish Way. We've separated the traffic way from the bike lane with 2 elements. One element there was a valley gutter for water, and then a curb element to keep vehicles off of that part of the trail. So probably something more along that curb type element, although that's not always recommended for trail projects for some other considerations, but it's a buffer.
Any further questions? Okay.
No, I'm familiar with the project. I think it's just so exciting that it's finally going to happen. It's finally getting done. So this is great news.
How do the property owners feel about the right-of-way and it being a one-way road?
This was, both of these were actually brought up by the property owners.
Okay.
So we had, I think we had 2 or 3 meetings with them. Cool. Yeah. So we there was an initial discussion that I wasn't necessarily a part of. The last meeting that we had with them, once we had what I call the shortcut version, which is this one, kind of cutting through one piece of the Brown property. That was an alignment that was considered as part of the Harbor Trail also, but because of the right-of-way acquisition at the time wasn't executed. So it's not a totally new plan, but it's something that was most palatable to the owners.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and open up for public comment.
Hi, Eileen. I do use the Harbor Trail quite a lot, and so I'm familiar with the traffic situation there, and I think the one-way is probably a very safe, much safer alternative. And oh,
Your puppy, I was just saying hi to
is
your
she
puppy.
speaking?
No, she was smiling.
Oh. She's learning how to be a council member.
It's even better. We need
So,
great council members like that.
And I go that little shortcut through the field, which is lumpy and a little slippery sometimes, so I'm looking, that would be nice to have that fixed. And I think directing people to enter 101 where you have traffic control is the smart thing to do and avoid accidents. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any further public comment? Okay, let's go ahead and bring it back to the advisory committee. Let's see. Well, we have a recommendation here from our TAC. Do we have a motion on our resolution 2018-21?
Motion to adopt resolution 2018-21.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Fallman,
Yes.
Commissioner Keim,
Yes.
Policy Advisor Tucker,
Yes.
Chair Howard.
Yes. Okay, very good. Thank you for those comments, folks. Thank you, John. Let's go ahead. A Crescent City request for $110,140 for match funds. Tamara?
So after reviewing the spreadsheet, as I discussed earlier, talking about the funding we have available right now and the importance of timeliness with the match funding for the ATP grant, the TAC made a recommendation that was unanimously supported to deny the city's request of $110,140 and recommend a resolution 2018-20 authorizing funds of $85,140 because that's the funding that we have available right now. When the fund balance is restored with that $235,000 plus, the city may at that time or may not come back and request additional funding, but this is what we can do now. And when taking a look at the timeliness and everything, how it's moving forward, this is the best that we can do with the funds that we have available.
Understood. Thank you. Any further input from representatives from the city today?
Just like to mention one thing, and that is, although there was a shortfall, we asked for less funds than originally. The amount of funding will get us through the design phase, which is kind of that key phase, and that includes the permitting, all the additional geologic studies, and coastal permitting, which we anticipate will be the most rigorous.
It should be, based on past precedent. Thank you for that update, John. Appreciate it. Okay, let's go ahead and open up for public comment. Hello. Eileen Cooper for the record.
Yes. So I saw the city presentation, I think at the city council meeting.
Eileen,
was
I
it?
can't hear you.
At the city council meeting.
Thank you.
And then came home and thought about it, and it struck me as that you were pretty far along in your design element for this, because it showed a very smooth off-cliff with surfacing. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the design, but
Yes.
the city has. I don't know if the county has. Smooth, sterile, and not much at the toe, which you would expect, you know, is the place where the erosion is going to take place. I don't know how that's secured. But it really did strike me as very sterile, and I question what alternatives we have. And it is, seeing as you're so far along in choosing what this thing is going to look like, I called the Coastal Commission, and they are not aware of any designs yet. And I don't think this is the way to go about doing a project like this without some consideration for the sensitivity of that cliff. And we are sterilizing that whole bluff with all that concrete. What kind of mitigation? I just read statistics that, you know, every scrap of land along the coast that has willows growing on it is essential to wildlife. That is why it's designated as ESHA. It is the food for our wildlife is literally starving because we are concreting the land as human beings and putting in lawns everywhere. So what are we going to do to compensate for that important habitat? What can we do to make this a better project? I don't think we're there yet. I think Coastal needs to be in on this. I think the public needs to be given alternatives and mitigations. And I'm putting this way up front because I think this is too far along the planning process, you know, to be set in stone yet.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
If I could, this topic is not within the jurisdiction of the commission. It's within the jurisdiction of the city council for the city's project, the county board of supervisors for the county project. We're contributing match funds, but we don't have control over the process that our partner agencies are moving through.
Understood, and thank you for emphasizing that at this time. I'm sure Ms. Cooper will emphasize her concerns to the appropriate agency, in this case, the City of Crescent City, with those concerns, and I'm sure as they were shared with the Coastal Commission and representatives for the city were here today, I think it was probably heard loud and clear. So thank you, Ms. Cooper. At this point in time, if there's no further public comment, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the commission. Do we have a motion at this time on resolution 2018-20?
Motion to adopt resolution 2018-20.
So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please pull the vote.
Commissioner Kime?
Yes.
Commissioner Fallman?
Yes.
Policy Advisor Tucker?
Yes.
Chair Howard?
Yes. Appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go ahead with item number F, which is our discussion items. So we'll first discuss the 2019-20 overall work program development and transportation planning conference. Tamara?
This is the time of year that we, at the TAC, initiate the overall work program conversations for next year's work program that will begin July 1. We have several projects to take a look at, several ideas, several things, but generally we're having a hard time spending our RPA funding because there continues to be greater and greater restrictions on those funds. Not something that happens at District 1 necessarily, but that happens at the state level. And in fact, the RPA funds year over year continue to go unspent by rural RTPAs because we have trouble with the increased restrictions of the fund source. So part of looking at that and moving forward is I was thinking about going to the Transportation Planning Conference, which is in February or March, I'm not sure of the date. I wanted to let you all know that it's a state-sponsored planning conference. The Caltrans and the CTC put a lot of work into putting that on. It's in Southern California this year. I've never been to the Transportation Planning Conference, but I thought it might be a good place to get new and helpful ideas about transportation planning in rural regions and what is some of the new and most effective ways, topics to move forward with. So I'm hoping that not only for this year, but into the future that helps. So I wanted to let you all know that I intend to go to that. The travel is authorized in the work program, but it's something that's not typical like the Rural Counties Task Force meetings that I go to every other month. And so if you have any questions about that, Kevin, I don't know if you've been to that planning conference.
I have not attended in previous years, but I do plan to attend the meeting in February.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions at this time? Okay, very good. Tam, anything to add? Okay, very good. All right, let's discuss last chance grade. No, it's probably going to be a discussion tomorrow at the North Deal meeting, but do you have any updates for us at this time?
I have no updates for last chance grade at this time.
Well, I'll just, on a more of a post-election, or post-election, also post-proposition period of time specific to Proposition 6. I think this county and city are obviously relieved at the direction of voters for the state of California and the support of Senate Bill 1 and its continuance here. I think this county in particular and our city would have struggled tremendously with not only our local streets and roads, but in particular our vital linkage, which is Highway 101 at last chance grade if that funding were to disappear. I know our state senator expressed to me recently as last week the importance of that funding continuing, and that's probably where we're going to hedge our bets when it comes to fixing that alignment and realigning it up the hill. So I'm grateful to the voters of the state of California that they could think big picture versus some narrow-mindedness that I've seen come out of various elected officials within this community. That's all I have to say on that subject. I hope that was clear enough. Let's go ahead on US Highway 109 intersection at Elk Valley Crossroad. Any further updates on that?
We awarded the contract in the last meeting for the planning process.
Correct.
The planning process is, and the planning funds are actually grant funded for this project, and they're very separate from any of the conversations that we had in the TAC meeting about other funding sources, just to be clear for you all on that. So we will, that process will, that planning document doesn't initiate for another couple months because of timing with the consultant and when they could get started. So they just, you know, all of the consultants, because of the influx of funds of transportation, everybody's busy. And I think, for example, with the cost savings that might have been anticipated with the city's ATP-funded project, I'm not confident that they will see any cost savings because construction costs are really high, and they're going to continue to be high until the contractors and the contracting industry can boost up to the level that we need to complete the transportation construction that we need in the state right now.
Very good. Thank you. Let's also discuss at this time the turn pocket issue that's specific to US Highway 101 north of the Fred Hay Drive bridge, Dr. Fine Bridge.
So I don't have anything to add on this project or on the turn pockets. I was
hoping Mr. Tucker might, but maybe does or doesn't.
Maybe not, but I don't have anything to add on this, and where we are with any of those turn pockets in that corridor.
So you're talking about the series of intersections north of the Smith River area? I don't have any updates for
that
particular area.
Did Caltrans share the letter from David Morgan with the Transportation Commission? I know it came specifically to me at the county. Is there a possibility that that opinion could also be shared with the Transportation Commission? I don't want to let this issue die in essence, in painful death, just because we couldn't find justification at this time for an area specific around our new retail location on Timber Boulevard. However, I do want to ensure that if there's another venue for collecting data that would justify a turn pocket or a turn lane into Timber Boulevard or some of the other areas that are receiving a high level of congestion and causing the great deal of skid marks I see within District 3, I want to make sure that gets addressed appropriately. So any suggestions, Mr. Tucker, that you might have specific to that report that was given to Del Norte County Board of Supervisors, if you could also ensure that that could be sent to the Del Norte Local Transportation Commission so we could appropriately agendize it and follow up on it, as I'm almost certain we're going to continue to hear about this from the public.
Yeah, I'll follow up and make sure that the commission receives the letter from Caltrans. And we can
If
talk
he could
about it at a
just
future meeting.
send it to me, then I can put it in the next meeting's agenda packet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any further items to discuss this time, Tamara?
No.
If not, let's go ahead, move to commissioners' reports. Policy Advisory Member Tucker, anything to report at this time?
Based on some conversations with Commissioner Howard and Executive Director Layton about concerns along 199, the maintenance staff at Caltrans are looking into doing skid testing, and the area that they've identified for skid testing is post mile 9.5 to 24. I'm not sure, we have to work with our Sacramento office to schedule the skid testing, but they hope to accomplish that in the next couple of weeks. And that's just to try and figure out if there's anything in terms of the friction of the roadway that might be leading or affecting drivers. So that's something that I wanted to report.
Yeah, if we could stay on that
Yeah.
topic. Mr. Tucker, that's an important piece. I know if folks have read the triplicate recently, there was an article published today. And then between social media and the newspaper outlets, we seem to be getting a high level of reported accidents on Highway 199. It's cause for concern for many reasons besides the loss of life, besides the loss of property, besides the high level that we're seeing. Obviously, the jeopardy to our pristine Smith River is of concern. We have an issue here that seems to be increasing here the last several months, some due to maybe weather conditions, some not. Either way, what we do know is that the timeliness of data delivery that would help Caltrans, specifically on a state highway system, better analyze that data, or essentially cause of crashes, which generally comes through the California Highway Patrol. It's not, I don't think it's timely enough at this junction, or at least at this intersection of time, for Caltrans to make appropriate decisions during a winter weather period. After speaking with Brad, met him today, and Matt Brady and Tom, I don't recall his last name, Fitzgerald at your office, and then also a direct push on California Highway Patrol, their PIO, and also Larry, who will be at tomorrow's Northfield meeting. Larry DP. I think it's going to be extremely important that we kind of take a look at what's going on up there in an expedited fashion. It just does not seem to be one location. This particularly hit home to myself and a lot of other folks with a colleague who was in a recent accident up there on Hardscrabble, and I don't think that she would be with us here today if the guardrail that had just been ripped out by the fatality a few weeks earlier had been replaced as it was 7 days before she was in her accident, which was a pretty terrifying one, which I'm surprised she made it out of based on what I've been told by a few folks. So I've got a great deal of concern what I see going on in District 3 specific to Highway 199. I have expressed those concerns to the Director of Caltrans Region 1, Mr. Brady. I'm going to re-express those concerns today here before the Transportation Commission. I especially thank you for the input, Mr. Tucker, and the importance, because I know now that Mr. Brady has basically had some conversation with you today specific to these conversations that we've had, and I know it's going to be addressed. Tom's willingness to push forward these skid tests specific to the areas of concern right now, I think is critical to us having real-time data to be able to respond to see if there's an issue with those road surfaces and addressing potential traction issues within those particular areas. So very much appreciated, Mr. Tucker.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. There's a lot of things that are going on, and sometimes it's important to get the local perspective. And that's why we kind of rely on our maintenance staff. They drive the roads on a regular basis, and so it's always good for us to touch base with them. And so I think that our maintenance staff are also going to reach out to the CHP and Gasky Fire to see. Yep. The big thing is trying to identify what the issue is, because at this point nobody really knows what's contributing to these collisions, and until we can figure that out, we can't really do anything to address it.
Well, what I found very helpful in the conversation today with Director Brady is that this problem area for us, specifically between 10.6 and 10.8 on 199, where we've lost lives, we've lost vehicles into the Smith. The fact that we've got a guardrail going up there now after 2 years of continuous conversation by this commission, really super happy about that. Glad it's being addressed, and I really appreciate your time and point of contact on this and making sure those communications have taken place throughout the last 2 years. But very happy about that we could help address a huge community concern up there on 199. Didn't mean to cut you off, though. I know you had another thing to add there.
No, I think you addressed it. But yeah, any concerns, feel free to share that with me, and I will take that back to our staff at Caltrans.
Certainly will. Okay. Ms. Kime.
I do not have anything to report.
What?
I do not have anything to report. I am also very thankful for that individual that is here with us, that we know and love. It's hard to imagine. And I know that speed wasn't a factor.
New tires were not a factor. Speed was not a factor. So the skid tests that Tom Fitzgerald will be doing, I think, will help get the communication we need to the right people to address the issue, because that's the second one in less than a 2-month period that has occurred at that location, and that's a brand new stretch of asphalt and bridge right there, and now guardrail again. Mr. Fallman.
I was in attendance at our Finance Committee meeting shortly before this meeting. We all approved our audit just now in our consent agenda. There were no findings, no major discrepancies. However, Director Layton had expressed some misgivings with the auditors themselves and the audit team, and so I'm supportive of our director in pursuing whatever options she needs to make sure we have good audit. Don't want any holes in the life raft.
Yeah, and that Director Layton, does that need to come from the Finance Committee direction to you, or should it come from the Commission?
Our informal plan in our committee meeting today was I would go back to Charwell Benson Hartwick, our CPA firm, have conversations with them about appropriate next steps. If there are any next steps that we feel we need to take with continuing our contract that we have in place right now. It's a 3-year contract, so this is the first of 3 years. Then I will request a second audit committee meeting. We'll discuss potential changes in our auditor, and we will make those recommendations back to the commission through that process.
Very good. Thank you. All right, anything further, Mr. Fallman?
No, Chair Howard.
Okay. All right. I'll just wrap up by saying Mr. Tucker pretty much addressed a lot of what I wanted to express during my comment and report today. I will add our recent trip to Washington, D.C. specific to infrastructure issues. We did meet with Federal Highways and Department of Transportation on last chance grade. A great deal. Obviously, it still is a priority of the city of Crescent City, the Del Norte County Transportation Commission, and the County of Del Norte, plus other major stakeholders that this section of highway be addressed. Last chance grade, as we're finding out, especially within DOT in Washington, D.C., has become common language. Everybody knows what last chance grade is, and more importantly, they know about the importance of last chance grade on Highway 101 in Del Norte County. I think the full court press that the various agencies here in Del Norte County have had, including the tribal governance, has been critical to ensuring that last chance grade is common language within the federal agencies. I was extremely impressed with that they've came to the table knowing about the importance of our project. I will say, in addition to that, we did discuss a lot of potential for infrastructure packages coming out in the next fiscal year. There seemed to be a lot of interest by Congress to potentially take these up. Not especially so on the Senate side right now. After hearing from the administration, some of the workability of what they were proposing made zero sense to me, and this is coming directly from Elaine Chao, who's the Secretary of Transportation. Washington, D.C. is a fickle animal, and the current administration is even more fickle on how business is conducted. But the interesting piece of what was proposed, at least during discussion with many county supervisors from the president's staff, was public-private partnerships. And as some of this language came out, in particular to, let's say, road projects on major federal highways like U.S. Highway 101, public-private partnerships are a reality in major urban areas. They are not a reality within small rural. That communication was directly expressed to Secretary Chao. My hope is that we could get beyond some of these discussions, especially with the new Congress coming in and some willingness to actually take on an infrastructure bill this year. We do not know what it's going to look like, but in essence, we know that whatever comes forward, whatever filters down to our rural communities, specifically to Caltrans and then pass through to us, is going to be extremely important to our last chance grade project. So we will continue to communicate wisely in a joint voice that the importance of last chance grade cannot be underestimated, and we'll move forward accordingly. That's all I have at this time. All right, we're going to go ahead and adjourn from the Policy Advisory Committee and reconvene as the Local Transportation Commission, and by poll vote, approve and adopt actions taken by the Policy Advisory Committee. Do we have a motion on the table at this time?
Motion to adopt the actions taken by the Policy Advisory Committee.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Public comment. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Please pull the vote.
Okay, Commissioner Kime,
Yes.
Commissioner Fallman,
Yes.
Chair Howard.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is for Tuesday, January 1st, 2018 at 3, which is a national holiday. How would you guys would like to move forward with this? Tamara, do you have any suggestions?
I do have a recommendation that we miss the January meeting and meet again on February 5th, which is our regularly scheduled meeting for that month. Because if something came up, I don't anticipate any action items on the January agenda at this time. The TAC doesn't anticipate any action items. Regardless, we would have to have a special meeting because a regular meeting day is not available to us. So if we need a special meeting, then I would call it, but I'm not anticipating needing a special meeting for the month of January. We would come back in February with a some kind of a rough sketch of an overall work program for next year. The TAC members and I will continue to work on that until the agendas come out for the TAC and the commission that month.
Concerns from the commission?
No concerns, that sounds very reasonable.
Okay, well, if an emergency comes up, I know you'll convene us.
I'll be in town.
All of January.
Well.
No worries. Very good.
We'll work it out.
All right. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you again.